Hello and welcome to this review of Panasonic's HC VX870 4K camcorder. It is, I think, the cheapest 4K camcorder at the time of recording that you can get, at least here in the UK. I know you can get GoPros and they shoot 4K as well, but they're not really what you'd call a camcorder, are they? And yes, you can get smartphones that shoot 4K, etc. But you know what I mean. In the sort of camcorder form factor, I think this is the cheapest, most entry-level 4K capable camcorder you can get. So in the review, I'm going to look at the picture quality, the ergonomics, the sound, bits and bobs. So let's get started. First of all, with a quick look round the camcorder. And the first thing to say about it is that it is very, very lightweight. I mean, it's compact, as you can see, but it's also very lightweight. Now, initially, I thought it felt a bit plasticky and it might get knocked or something, but actually, I decided I liked the lightweight. I took this camcorder to a day out. I went to a camper van show, a motorhome show, because I was thinking of buying a camper van, and I took this with me, not to do any great works of filming art, literally just to have it with me and squirt it around anything I rather like the look of. So I was using it very much like an average everyday camcorder user, and I almost didn't notice I had it with me. I could carry it in my hand, I could put it in a coat pocket. I imagine if you put a strap on it and put it around your neck, you would not notice it even after a day of walking around, and that's a good thing for this type of camcorder, which, as I will come to, is very much a sort of point and shoot camcorder. This is not going to be, I don't think, any kind of great cinematic works type camcorder. This is one just to take out if you want to go on, you know, family days out or events and so on, filming the family dog, and you just point and shoot and let it get on with it. And for that, it's very good. And as I say, the lightweight meant that I could just carry it around with me all day, and that was absolutely fine. So that's the first thing to notice. A couple of other things I'll mention about it ergonomically speaking. First of all, it's got this integrated lens hood that just opens up when you switch the camcorder on, and that's very useful, providing it continues to work. I have seen reports occasionally of these jamming up, but it means you haven't got to bother with a lens cap or even a little flicky switch on the side to open and close it. Just turn the camcorder on and it's ready to go. Shut it down and it shuts itself off, and I rather like that as well. One thing that is very peculiar about this camcorder, I mean, this is just downright weird, is this cold shoe on the back. This does actually detach. There's a little switch in there you can press and pull it out. But what a weird place to put a cold shoe, because if you put a microphone, little Rode Video Mic Pro or something in there, then it's going to get in the way of your finger getting on the zoom toggle, and you will want your finger on the zoom toggle for composing your shots. And I've tried it. In fact, no, I haven't got it around here, but when I put the VMP on it, it just covers here and gets in the way of you using the toggle, which is rather annoying. And the photo button is there as well. And you might say, well, okay, maybe it's not designed for you to put a microphone on there. Maybe you think you're going to put a light on there or something. But this camcorder actually comes with a little built-in LED there, so clearly Panasonic weren't thinking you're going to put a light there. It's just a weird place for a cold shoe, and I really don't know what Panasonic were thinking. While we're talking about slightly odd placement, you've got the headphone socket there at the front, and I always like headphone sockets at the back because that's kind of where your ears are going to be, at the back here, rather than having the cable snake around. And I'll mention this actually while we're talking about this. Notice how the cover for the headphone socket flips up and then just sits there sticking out, whereas the cover for the DC in is a nice little slide. Now, that one's not going to get broken off. This one, I think over time, that's going to end up getting snapped off. So that's a rather odd thing, just something to watch out for, I suppose. One thing I did initially think was going to bother me, but actually now I don't think it will, is the SD card slot is underneath the bottom of the camcorder. It's not the first time Panasonic have done it like this. And I thought, well, do you know, that is going to be annoying, because if you put a nice big tripod plate on there for a sensible sized tripod, it's going to cover up the SD card slot. And if you do want to change cards, then you've got to faff about with taking the tripod plate off. But as I've already explained, I really think this camcorder is just best suited to handheld, carry it with you and squirt off point and shoot type shots. I don't really think it's a proper set it up on a tripod and take shots like that kind of camcorder. You can, but I just don't think it's the ideal optimal use for this. So I wouldn't bother taking this for anything other than just carrying it in a pocket and shooting off some shots. So I don't think having that for the SD card slot is actually going to cause me any bother. Your mileage may vary. You may be someone who's outraged at the very notion of an SD card slot underneath. But no, I've come to the conclusion, for my purposes, I think it will be fine. What else is there to note about this? I tell you what else. It doesn't come with a separate standalone battery charger, so you have to charge the battery on the camcorder. That is annoying because, of course, you might want to go out with the camcorder while leaving another battery on charge if you have a spare battery, but you can't because you need the camcorder to charge it up, unless, of course, you go and buy third party, which you're probably going to do anyway, so Panasonic aren't really helping themselves. Given that they want you to buy their nice expensive batteries, they should give you a little battery charger. You might be slightly less likely to go off and buy a third-party cheaper battery and battery charger as well. Also, on the ergonomic front, while we're talking ergonomics, the microphone socket. It's great that it has a microphone socket, so you can plug in that external Video Mic Pro and obstruct the zoom toggle, but the socket for the mic is here, inside where the screen shuts, which means that whenever you want to pack this thing up, you've got to unplug the mic. That might seem like a little thing, but actually it's really annoying, because if you do want to leave this set up with a mic on it, you probably want to leave the mic plugged in. You don't have to always open it up, plug it in, take it out, and what's more, eventually it's going to end up wearing the socket, and goodness knows these little 3.5mm jacks can be dodgy enough at the best of times. I've got one microphone where you kind of have to gaffer tape it in to make sure it makes a good connection. You really don't want to be unplugging and plugging them in again all the time. So that is just a bizarre location for the microphone input. If anything, that should be the headphone jack, and the microphone perhaps should be there if they're going to have that as the two locations of the sockets. Right, I think that's about it on the ergonomic front. It's got a touch screen, I'll mention that, and it's fine. It's I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there's no sort of lip on the touchscreen. It's completely flat from the plastic onto the screen, so you're not trying to force your finger around the edge of a bezel, which you are on some, notably Sony's sort of competitor to this, the AXP33, has a little recess. The screen is recessed slightly and you're sort of pushing your finger into it. And this one's nice and flat. It works perfectly well. You touch it, it responds. No problems at all with the touchscreen. Right, that is the ergonomics. Let us now turn to the pressing issue of what's the picture like. I have to say, I like the picture off this thing, both in 4K mode and in HD mode, which I'll come to in a minute. It is crisp, it is detailed. You can zoom in, obviously, on a 4K picture and zoom in and look at all the little pixels. And yeah, it's really nice and sharp. It does quite a good job. No complaints with that, I don't think. What you do find, though, is that if you put the camcorder on intelligent auto, which is just basically it does everything for you, all you've got to do is point it and line up your shots, it overexposes the image. I would say quite badly, actually. The darks aren't dark enough and the bright bits are totally blown out. You lose all the detail in anything that's bright. And also the image by default is actually very desaturated. You really want to turn the colours up a bit. Now there are ways around that, particularly if you go into the what they call Intelligent Auto Plus mode. You can have a little tweak of the exposure, but not the saturation. And then if you go into manual mode, you can do tweaks of the exposure and the saturation and the sharpness, and also tweak the white balance a little bit as well. And one of the good things actually about the manual mode on this is you don't actually have to do everything manually in manual mode. It simply means it gives you the option of doing things manually. So you can still have it as a point and shoot. It's doing it all for you, but being in manual mode gives you access to the setup controls like the saturation. And if you boost the saturation and you turn the exposure down, you find actually it's producing pretty good images that are absolutely fine to use. Now, the low light performance is not brilliant. That is typical both of being a small camcorder, because any little camcorders like this, quite frankly, they've got little chips inside them, and the laws of physics just mean they can't really collect that much light, and the images are never that good. But it's all right, I suppose, for the kind of thing. It does better in HD mode, and in fact it does a very good HD picture. If you're not bothered about 4K, pop it into HD, does 50p and 60p obviously if you're in the States, and records that at 50 megabits a second, which is a lot of bits. And that means that this is actually a very good point and shoot HD camcorder if you're looking for one, and it's quite the bargain, I suppose, about £700 here in the UK. So if you're not bothered by 4K, look at this as an HD camcorder instead. Now, as you can see, the camcorder comes complete with a little microphone on top, fairly traditional sort of thing. This is a 5.1 surround sound mic, although it has the option to just operate as a stereo mic if you want. And, you know, typical of the genre, it does a perfectly reasonable job of capturing the general ambience around you. All the sounds, the fun of a fair, or I don't know, filming the ducks at the duck pond or whatever, it picks up that sound perfectly reasonably. I did make one minor alteration to it, which is that I cut up a very old microphone softy windjammer thing, just cut myself this little square piece and put it over the top, fastened it with an elastic band like that, and it made a heck of a difference, because of course the trouble with these camcorders is that no matter what they say about their menus offering you a wind noise reduction option, in my experience it makes no blooming difference whatsoever, and you don't really want it doing electrical processing to get rid of the wind noise, because it doesn't really know what it's doing. It's much better to actually get rid of the wind noise at source. So if you can get hold of a tiny little windjammer like that and just stick it over the top, it worked beautifully. Got rid of nearly all the noise when I was up at that camper van show. Didn't get any wind noise, got all the atmosphere from around me. Really, camcorder manufacturers should sell these little camcorders with a proper fluffy windjammer on the top. I don't know why they don't do it. Maybe they think consumers won't understand what it's there for. They don't want fluff on their camcorder. I don't know, but I wish they sold them with little windjammers, even just as an accessory in the pack or something. It really does make a huge difference to the quality of the sound. So as I say, it does a perfectly reasonable job. It's fair enough in terms of vocal performance. If you are sort of holding it out like that, vlogger style, so you're only, what's that, 40, 50 centimetres away from it, and speaking reasonably loudly, it picks it up reasonably well. As soon as you get further away, like any microphone, the sound starts to get a bit distant, bit tinny, bit echoey, depending on what environment you're in. So don't expect miracles off that top mic. And of course, even if you put a little shotgun on top, you still can't go very far away before it will start sounding rough. Microphones like to be close to whoever is doing the talking. But for built-in mic, absolutely fine for generally capturing the ambience of whatever is around you. There is one caveat, I would say, and that is switch the thing to manual audio levels. I say this about nearly every camcorder, because these things, in trying to do it automatically and trying to be clever, basically they just squish the hell out of the audio. They make all the quiet sounds loud and all the loud sounds still loud, and you just get this horrible mush of all the sound sounds the same loudness. And if you aren't making any sound and you're really quiet, it just brings that level up, and then you get lots of nasty hiss. So whatever you do, set the levels. And what I did find it worth doing was using the AGC on, which sounds contradictory to what I've just said, but in fact, if you make it manual levels with the auto gain control on, it's just using the auto gain to sort of squish it if it gets a bit too loud, but it doesn't do anything too dramatic to the rest of the audio. It's using it just as a sort of compressor limiter to stop anything distorting, and that, I think, worked really quite well. So it's decent enough camcorder sound. One final point to make about the audio. A little earlier on my YouTube channel, I did an unboxing of the JVC. Oh, I've got it here actually, hold on. This one, the JVC GY HM170, and I filmed that on this camcorder using an Audio-Technica ATR 3350 lapel mic, which explains why you got quite a lot of popping on it, because I had the lapel mic here and I was looking down at what I was doing. So forgive the popping, that's just me placing the microphone badly, but the sound quality was this 20 quid microphone going into this camcorder. So look back through the videos and have a watch of that if you want. You can see what the sort of sound quality is like. I say, ignore the popping, that was just because I had the mic too close to me, but the actual sound was perfectly decent. Now then, using this thing out in the field, a few comments to make on that. First of all, there's this little zoom lever. I've mentioned it before. It's fine, it's very light, very easy to move. I would only really want to use it for composing a shot. I wouldn't really want to try doing any gentle creeping zooms or anything like that. You haven't really got that much range of movement on it. You'd have to have a very light, delicate touch to be able to do a gentle creeping zoom on that really steadily, because of course if you only got to knock it a tiny fraction and suddenly your zoom leaps a bit and you've ruined the shot. But I'm not a big fan of zooms in shots anyway. I'd rather just compose the shot and press record, so just be aware of that. What else? The LED, did I mention the LED on the front here? It's quite bright actually for a single LED, but it is still only a single LED. So if you're going to be doing a type of vlogging type thing, again, camcorder here, at that distance you're going to illuminate your face, it will be fine. But if you're expecting to illuminate a room with that light, or film a wedding or a disco or something in the semi-darkness, no. Think again. It's bright, but it's only so bright. It is actually quite a good shape though. It's a it sounds like a silly thing to say, but you don't get a circle of light out of it. You do get a sort of 16:9 type shape of light coming out of the LED. So that's certainly quite good. The camcorder does offer a manual mode. I have mentioned this earlier, but there is no lens ring, no nice big grippy lens ring to actually operate it. What you get instead is this silly little dial on the side, and it is a tiny little dial, very fiddly, and it both turns and presses in to select certain things. And it really is so fiddly to operate, you can't sensibly do much with it other than use it to select things on screen. So again, coming back to my first comment, which is that this is a point and shoot, take it on the family holiday, film the family dog type camcorder, is because you are in effect going to put this into auto, because trying to do anything in manual, either using the dial or the touchscreen, is just too fiddly to do it sensibly. For example, let's say you assign this to focus. Well, you're going to be fiddling with the flipping thing like mad trying to get your focus, and even though it offers you a focus peaking assist, it's just not very practical to focus like that. Equally with exposure, yeah, you could do a bit of exposure like that, I suppose, if you really want to. I found, for the most part, this does a reasonable job with exposure anyway, provided you've dialed in the exposure compensation that I mentioned earlier. And yes, okay, every now and again you'll find that you've got a backlit subject and you need to tell it to override and bring everything up. But frankly, you've got the screen flipped out anyway. You might as well just press the button and press the little on-screen icons as fiddle with this, because by the time you've pressed it in, selected the menu, scroll down to exposure, pressed again, just press the button on screen. It's going to be quicker and easier to set your exposure in that rare circumstance like that than it is using this dial. So nice to have the option of manual control so that you can override certain things and set up a shot the way you want. But in terms of using the manual controls for live action, live event filming, changing things on the fly, this dial is just too fiddly, and really you might as well just put the camera into auto. It does a very good auto focus, this. Yes, it will get confused occasionally, but most camcorders auto focuses do, but it's quite quick. It seems to be very accurate, provided that nothing comes between the camcorder and what you're filming. You know, if you're filming something over there and something walks between it, it may lose focus as it tries to get that thing that's walked in between. If that's going to be a real problem, of course, you get the autofocus on the thing you want and then just toggle it into manual and it will stay locked on whatever it is that it had set on. Won't help you if you're trying to do a tracking shot, but then you would never be able to do a manual focus on a tracking shot on this little dial anyway, so you're probably stuffed for that kind of shot on this camcorder. I mentioned you get a focus peaking, where the screen turns blue and it puts little blue dots over everything that it thinks are sharp. But in terms of the manual exposure, you get no exposure aids at all. There are no zebra bars, there's no histogram, there's no waveform. So you can be manually setting your exposure all you like, but it's complete guesswork. I mean, yes, you're looking at the image on the screen, but you can never trust an image on the screen to actually be a realistic interpretation of what's being recorded, because it depends on what the screen brightness is, what the ambient brightness around you is, all kinds of factors. But the camcorder doesn't give you any zebra bars or anything to help you know that levels at a certain part of the image are at a certain level. So again, that's why I have to say the manual controls on this, though it's kind of nice to have them, don't really work that well, and you are better off treating this as an auto point and shoot with a bit of manual configurability. It's better if it works that way. The touchscreen I've mentioned, it is fine. There is only one problem with it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it from there. Let's bring it up and turn around. It's got these little menu buttons at the bottom left of the screen, and one's a left and a right, and they're so tiny. I don't know. I mean, I have fairly normal sized hands, but these buttons here, I'm forever pressing the wrong one, or neither of them will be pressed. So Panasonic could really do with, well, making those a lot bigger. I think just make them bigger, or put one on one side of the screen and one on the other side of the screen. That would certainly help. Speaking of the screen, as I remember commenting on the Panasonic X920 camcorder, the icons on the screen, it's like Panasonic just took a bucket of icons and threw them willy-nilly at the screen. You can turn them off so they're not distracting to you, but I quite like having all the information on the screen. And oh my word, it's like a chimpanzee just threw all the icons at the screen. It's a total mess, but that seems to be Panasonic's way. The optical image stabilization in this, hybrid OIS as Panasonic calls it, it's pretty good, particularly if you're standing still. It's less good at sort of running along with it. That's all right, but you know, if you're standing still and you just want it to act as a sort of pseudo tripod when you haven't got a tripod, then the OIS does really well. Even if you're at the full 20 times optical zoom, it does a pretty good job of stabilizing. There's a bit of jitter. You can sort of see the image shimmering a fraction, but given what it's like when you turn the stabilization off, it's doing really well. Now, it is not as good, the stabilization, as, where is it? Don't know. Sony's AX33, which I also have on test. That's got the balanced optical steady shot system from Sony. That is just remarkable. This isn't as good, but it's decent enough. No real complaints on the OIS. And the other thing this tries to do, which I found slightly annoying, is that it's got this gyro thing in it, so it knows when you're not holding the camcorder level, and it keeps trying to adjust the image back to level when you're not quite holding it right. And as someone who likes the camera to film what I'm pointing at, even if it is off, I just found that slightly annoying. And in particular, at the beginning of my shots, for a couple of seconds, the shot would start. This is when I'm looking back at it in the edit suite. The shot would start, and then suddenly it would just turn itself slightly as the camcorder adjusted to whatever it thought was right. So I haven't yet found out a way of turning that off. There may well be, but at the moment I'm slightly annoyed by it constantly trying to adjust everything to be level. There must be a menu option. I just don't think I've quite found it yet, which is odd because I've been through the menus several times. Overall then, what do I reckon to this little camcorder? When I first got it and I unboxed it and I looked at it, I must admit I wasn't terribly impressed. Not quite sure why, but I thought it's a bit lightweight, and then I started filming with it and I wasn't too impressed with how it treated all the highlights and things. But the more I've used it, the more I have grown to like this camcorder, having realised, as I have now mentioned several times, what its ideal use is. And this will never be a replacement for your Sony f55 cinema camera. It is a point and shoot, put it in a pocket, take it with you on family holidays, put it in auto or manual but using the auto function so you can fiddle with all the picture settings, and it's very decent. Yeah, enjoying using it. And I was thinking that having reviewed it, I would probably sell this camcorder on, because that's what I do with a lot of the kit. Get it, test it, sell it on. And I'm genuinely thinking I might keep this because I just enjoyed having it as a grab cam to take for whatever I was about to go out and do. So I think really that is quite a compliment to pay to the camcorder, providing you understand what its limitations are and where it's coming from. Understand that this is not the easiest camcorder to use if you want any manual functions. It's not going to give you great cinematic controls over the picture quality. You can do some very basic adjustments when you're in manual mode, and I would advise you to do those basic adjustments even in manual mode, so that you can bring the auto exposure down a bit and the saturation up, and then just put it in auto, still in manual mode. I tell you what, I'm going to do another video explaining all the little tips and tricks, but accept it as a point and shoot, leave it in auto camcorder to take around with you, and it's a very good little camcorder, especially at the price, which, as I say, at the time of filming is about £700 here in the UK. Look, I hope this video was useful to you, and if it was, please do give it a quick click on that like button, the old thumbs up. It's very much appreciated. If you have any questions, drop them into the comments section below, and I will try to answer them, although sometimes I do have a few days delay before I can get around to doing the comments. If you're not already a subscriber to the channel, please do subscribe, and of course YouTube should let you know every time any new videos are uploaded. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.